All right, welcome to AstroTalk Scorpio season 2021. This season runs from October 23rd through November 21st of 2021. Before we dive in to look at what we should be focusing on and what the astrology of this season is, I do want to point out one thing at the beginning, which is, the sun is moving through the constellation of Scorpio from October 23rd to November 21st, but the planet Mars will also be moving through Scorpio from Halloween until about December 13th. And that does not always happen during Scorpio season. So it's kind of just like we had during Libra season where the sun and Mars were both moving through Libra. Now we're going to have these couple weeks where both the sun and Mars are moving through Scorpio. So we're going to see a huge increase in our desire nature for all different types of things and people. I feel like with Sun and Mars and Scorpio, we can be like a magnet. We're just like drawing things in and attracting things into our lives, which is very cool. One thing to watch out for is, what are we attracting? What are we magnetizing into ourselves? Because Scorpio energy has this tendency sometimes to go for things that are dark because they're fascinating and enigmatic. We also have the tendency sometimes to draw in things that touch upon like our deepest wounds. So just be careful when you're thinking about what it is you desire during this season and what you're trying to draw into life. Do some reflection on those things and those people to see if they really are good for you and they're going to help you kind of move in the positive direction of life, or to see if maybe you're drawing in some dark wounding things that really you could let go of. I think also when with Mars and Sun and Scorpio, we have the ability to tap into our deep well of power that lives within each of us. And it lives within each of us all the time, regardless of Scorpio season or not. I just think we tend to be a little bit more aware of it during this time. And so making sure that when we wield our personal power throughout this month, we're doing so in a constructive way, making sure that we're not manipulating people, we're not coercing others. And also Scorpio vibes, we need to be careful of, we don't want to have power over others. We want to have power in conjunction with others. And we'll touch on that more in a minute as well. And then I think lastly, with Mars and Scorpio for the last 3 weeks of this season, and a little bit beyond that, there is kind of some tendency for anger to come out and some more heated type of emotions. So just avoid tendencies for like vengeance and jealousy and being ruthless. I think also we need to watch out for the energy of punishing, because I think sometimes Scorpio is like in the lower expression. Scorpio will say, you hurt me, now I'm gonna punish you and make sure that you hurt as much or worse than I did. And so again, that may not show up for every single one of us, but it is something to be aware of to just make sure that we don't unconsciously fall into that pattern. Now, looking at the positives of Scorpio season, what should we be focusing our energy on? Number one, because I just talked about this intense desire nature that may be present for us, it's important to focus, number one, on sex and sexuality. I think that's such a huge part of this particular Scorpio season. So it's going to be a very sultry, sexy time of year. And I want each of us to be focusing on, what is it that we desire in terms of our own sexuality? What are our needs? Are those needs being fulfilled at this time? Are they not? What are we going to do about that? It's a good time to reflect on that. And just like, how can we allow ourselves to authentically explore our own sexuality and get our needs met in safe and supportive ways? The second thing we can focus on is collaborations during Scorpio season, which might sound counterintuitive because Scorpio tends to be an energy that does well alone. But in reality, when Scorpio can combine their own personal power with someone else's, like we just talked about a second ago, that's really when like amazing, magical things can happen and manifest. So thinking about, are there different business collaborations that you're interested in right now, or collaborations you can do on a personal project, an artistic project? Just be aware of opportunities that come up at this time. And then it's also a great time to focus on resources from other people. What I mean by that is if you are looking for a loan, let's say a business loan or a mortgage because you're considering to buy a place, now might be a supportive time to go after something like that. Scorpio season can also be a time of inheritance. I think additionally, let's say you work in nonprofit or fundraising, and you're trying to get donations from various people, organizations. Now can be a really good time to canvas for that, to get your message out there and to try to draw in other people's resources in that sense. And then I think lastly, if you're wanting to start a business or a project and you need, angel investors, or you're going to do a Kickstarter campaign or crowdfunding, something like that, this Scorpio season, especially with Mars and Scorpio too, can be a really powerful time for that. If you are putting positive energy and effort into that, and if it's aligned with what's really best for you. The third thing that's important to focus on in Scorpio season is self-work. Scorpio energy is that of transformation. It's regenerative. It's about evolution, continuing to evolve into better and more authentic and true versions of ourselves. And I think during Scorpio season as well, the veil is thinner. I mean that kind of in two ways. The veil between our world and kind of whatever else might be out there is thinner. But also I think the veil between our conscious minds and our subconscious is thinner as well. And I think that allows us to dive a little deeper and to do some potentially more intensive self-reflection and self-work. I'm suggesting that we kind of go beyond the obvious, not just journaling, not just talk therapy, but really from an energetic, emotional perspective, what can you do at this time to help release and let go of old things that need to change and make space for new things? So considering ideas like working with a past life regression therapist, working with different healing modalities like Reiki healing or other things that touch upon the energetic, emotional component of healing. There's lots of different ways you could go about this, but I think it is such a great time to dive deeply into ourselves, because in Scorpio season, we can face our own darkness with a little bit more grace, with a little bit less fear than at other times. We can use Scorpio season to shine the light on what within ourselves would we like to change? Would we like to transform? And we have the power to do that at this time. And I think lastly, during Scorpio season, it's just good to focus on and honor and celebrate our willpower and our resilience. I think the last 15 months have been hugely difficult times for most, if not all of us, in different ways, just based on what's happening personally, in addition to what's happening in the world. And so I think many of you, like me, have been struggling. And it's so important during Scorpio season to really recognize how much resilience we have, how much personal power and willpower and staying power we each have inherently within us, and to just appreciate what that has done for us, how that has served us over the last 15 months. And then I think as we move further into 2022 and beyond, we can start to realize that, some of those, we might not have to carry the torch of resilience and willpower every day all that much longer, which is great. But, really just appreciating at this time that you have the power to get through, to do the healing work, to be on your journey, to take the next step on wherever your path leads you. Looking ahead now to different practices that we can engage in Scorpio season, starting with yoga. I always recommend, from the physical perspective, yoga asana. Scorpio is a great time to engage in more vigorous physical practices, to engage in more heat building type of yoga. And I also think if you have not explored Kundalini yoga, Scorpio season is an excellent time to do that. I'm not super well versed in it, but I've participated in several Kundalini classes and a couple workshops, and just that idea of unlocking the power that lives kind of at the base of our spine and letting that power kind of flood up through us. To me, that's a very Scorpio concept. So I think that could be fun to explore. When we think about crystals for this season, there's two that I would suggest. The first one being Smoky Quartz. The reason I'm choosing that one is because it can help transmute fear into something more positive and productive. And I think one of the Achilles heels of Scorpio energy is that at the lower octave, it can be very fearful, and we're expressing a lot of fear and sometimes confusing fear for intuition. So Smoky Quartz, if that sounds like you and you're working on that right now, Smoky Quartz could be very helpful. The second stone is Moldavite. And the reason I'm choosing this is because this is a powerful stone of transformation. So when we think of those Scorpio concepts of transforming and evolving and regenerating, death and rebirth, Moldavite could be a helpful stone to work with connected to those ideas. In terms of herbs for this season, I'm recommending elderflower. Elderflower is connected to the death card in the tarot deck, which is also very connected to Scorpio energy. So if you're familiar with any of those concepts, you'll kind of see how they all go together. But the idea is that if you are in a process of letting go and releasing and trying to evolve and make space for something new, elderflower can be a supportive herb that can help with some of those concepts on not just the physical, but also kind of energetic plane as well. Looking at some of the major astrology things for the season, we already talked about the fact that Mars is going to be in Scorpio. That's a big thing. Venus is moving into Capricorn, I think around November 6th, and that wouldn't really be noteworthy except for the fact that it's going to retrograde. So Venus will be in Capricorn from like the beginning of November, I think all the way until the end of January. So I'm not going to touch on that so much here in this video, but as we get into the videos for Sag and Capricorn season, I'll be talking more about that. We do have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio on November 4th, and this is going to happen at 12 degrees of Scorpio. So finding where that is in your personal chart will help you to set intentions connected with a specific area of life that might be more present for you at that new moon. But kind of for all of us, it's interesting, this poor new moon is kind of trapped in a difficult energy. So we have the moon in Scorpio, it'll be here at 12 degrees of Scorpio. It's directly opposing Uranus, which is 12 degrees of Taurus. So what that shows me is that as we're thinking about the seeds we want to plant and the intentions we want to set, we might be unduly influenced by something on the outside. There might be an outside influence that makes us feel like, oh, we need to set intentions that are more out of the box and more out of the norm, and intentions that are, might surprise someone or shock someone. And it's great to be able to think outside the box when we're setting intentions, but just be careful that you don't get drawn into setting an intention that feels different just for the sake of being different, if that makes sense. And with the Uranus influence, that new moon, emotionally, we might feel just like a little unstable or a little more chaotic than usual. So we have moon opposite Uranus, and then we also have this T-square from Saturn, which shows me that at the new moon, we might feel some internal tension. We might just feel like something is blocking us, like there's something that's preventing us from getting to these goals and these concepts that we want to manifest into our life. And if you do feel that frustration, just ride it out. It will only last really a day or two. But it also makes me think that the intentions that we set need to have an element of realism to them, need to have an element of practicality. So of course we want to dream big and we want to put all our visions down on paper, but making sure the things that you truly decide that you want to co-create with the universe, God, whoever, making sure that there are practical and realistic steps you can take to get there, I think that will make your intentions all the more powerful at this new moon. And then lastly, we have kind of this nasty T-square, moon, Uranus, Saturn. The way out of that is Leo energy. So making sure that when you set intentions, they feel totally authentic, that they come from your heart, and making sure that whatever intentions you set are things that will infuse you with so much joy, so much love of life. And if you get that feeling when you think about or read the intentions you've written down, then I think you're on the right track. Second major thing that's going to happen later in the month is we are going to have a partial lunar eclipse, which is the same thing as a full moon. It's just like a pumped up full moon. We're gonna have a partial lunar eclipse when the moon is in Taurus, more specifically at 27 degrees of Taurus. And that's gonna happen, technically it happens on November 19th, but it's in the wee morning hours. So I would say really the evening of November 18th is when we wanna be, perhaps doing rituals or kind of focusing on this energy. So it's interesting. There's a couple great things about this lunar eclipse / full moon. It's trine Pluto. So I think that can give us a feeling of solidity, a feeling of being protected, kind of having a spiritual element to it as well. And the moon is square Jupiter, which I think can help us feel a little more buoyant. With the full moon square Jupiter, I think it's a good idea, like if you can go out with some friends that night or go out with people who make you laugh or do something that makes you feel kind of merry, like MERRY. And then also being around people at that time who can help you expand your viewpoint and your perspective and introduce new things to you in that way, I think could also be very beneficial at that full moon / lunar eclipse time. But what I think is the crux of this eclipse for all of us is that the full moon in Taurus is very close to the North Node, which at that time will be at 1 degree of Gemini. So it's almost done with our Sagittarius Gemini series of eclipses. So what that means to me is that this full moon eclipse is a time for releasing and letting go so that we can be more firmly on the path of collective evolution. So us as a humanity, us as a species, what are we trying to grow and evolve towards? And then what can we let go of at this full moon to help us step a little further in that direction of growth? And because the moon's in Taurus, I think we can focus on letting go of rigidity, letting go of the tendency to overwork. We can let go of kind of clinging to things that are known, clinging to tradition that doesn't serve a purpose, clinging to different forms of security, even though they may actually be holding us back instead of helping us move forward. And then I think lastly, like letting go of our unwillingness to diverge from a chosen path. So if any of those couple things I just mentioned strikes a chord with you or feels like something that you are working on, use the energy of the full moon eclipse to really help you let go, move a little further in the direction of releasing some of that stuff that may no longer serve a purpose in your life, and some of those elements that may no longer serve us as a collective as we grow and move forward. So that is kind of an overview of Scorpio season 2021, looking at the new moon on November 4th, the full moon lunar eclipse that will take place on the 19th, but really kind of paying attention the evening of November 18th for that. And then just really leaning into the strong desire in nature that we'll experience as the sun and Mars move through Scorpio over these next couple weeks. I wish you guys a great season, and we'll see you next month.